Hey guys, tonight we're riding back nearly 800 years to the open grasslands and icy winds of the Mongol Empire. A world where horses were everything, your tent was your house, and winter stretched longer than your patience. You've heard of Genghis Khan's unstoppable army, but what about the ordinary people? The ones just trying to stay warm, fed, and on a horse that wouldn't bite them. This was a world of felt tents flapping in the wind, crackling fires, and frozen earth where even your breath turned to ice. Warriors trained from childhood to ride and shoot, traders crossed hostile deserts, and the wrong insult could cut your career short. Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. It's always fun seeing who's joining this journey from across the world. Now, dim the lights, pull your blanket tight, and let's ride into the Mongol steppe together. You wake with a start, eyes burning as though tiny coals were pressed against your lids. The air in the yurt is thick and choking, heavy with the sour tang of last night's fire and the rank musk of unwashed wool. Somewhere close, a sheep shifts, and you can almost taste the damp ammonia that comes from where it peed again in the night. Your blanket, a coarse felt of tangled goat hair, clings to you like a second skin you never asked for. You roll over and discover you are not rested. You are marinated. Your body protests with every movement. Your joints creak like ancient wagon wheels, and your back feels as though it were packed in snow and left to freeze. The felt mat beneath you is damp, where someone else sweated, or worse, sweated and bled. You try to push yourself up, but your arms bend in protest, muscles stiff from cold and neglect. You realize you spent half the night dreaming of warmth, only to wake in a place colder than the tundra. In the half-light, you spot dark shapes at the edges of your yurt. Fleas or lice, you cannot tell which. One jumps from the felt to your leg, and you flick it away, only to hear tiny scrabbling on the wool overhead. You lie still and hope it moves on. Somewhere above, the yurt fabric quivers. A gust of wind rattles the wooden pole at the center, sending another puff of smoke and soot cascading down to mingle with the breath in your lungs. The smell is almost bearable until you remember the small pile of dung in the corner. You vowed yesterday not to step there again, but you slipped last time and your soaked leather boot squelched in defiance. This morning you keep your feet tucked under you, toes flexing against the chill, but you know you will have to stand soon. There is no other option. The sheep bleats softly, and then louder, as if complaining that the world has not yet provided breakfast. You remember the bowl of curdled mare's milk at the edge of your bedroll. It is lukewarm now, clotted around the edges, speckled with hair and grit. You swallow hard and push the bowl toward your lips. The sourness stings the back of your throat, but at least it is fuel. You take a hesitant sip, and your stomach growls in protest. A sudden clang reverberates through the camp. Someone is already up, tending the fire. You hear the crackle of flames and the low murmur of voices speaking in a language you half understand. The world outside is waking. You have no choice but to wake with it. You push yourself to your knees and swing your legs over the edge of the felt. Your feet touch the ground and shudder in shock. The earth is frozen solid from yesterday's chill. You can feel every pebble and every lump of hardened mud beneath your soles. You stand unsteadily, pressing your weight against the yurt's felt wall for support. The fabric sways, and for a moment you fear it will tear away and let the wind rush in like an unwelcome guest. Inside the yurt, the scent of goat hair and old smoke clings to the wooden ribs overhead. Tangled ropes and leather straps hang from pegs, tangled like cords of some forgotten instrument. You brush past them, searching for your tunic. It lies in a heap at the far end, stiff and scratched by goat horns during last night's chaos. You pull it on and feel the wool scratch at your skin as though scolding you for the night's slumber. Your trousers are next. They are thin linen and nearly threadbare, patched so many times that you cannot tell where the original fabric ends and the repairs begin. You step into them and tie the drawstring tight around your waist, cursing quietly when the knot slips and you have to start over. Each movement sends pain through your muscles, a reminder that comfort is a luxury you abandoned long ago. Outside, the sky is pale grey with dawn. You part the felt flap and peer out at the world beyond the yurt. Endless grassland flattened under frost, a rising mist that blurs the horizon, horses grazing at half speed as they wake from their own weary rest. The wind whistles across the plains, carrying with it the distant creak of wagon wheels and the faint bleat of livestock. It feels like a warning: survive or perish. You step out into the cold, boots crunching against the frozen earth. You wrap your arms around yourself and march toward the communal fire. A few others have gathered there already, rubbing their hands together and trading complaints about the night. One man blows into his cupped hands and shivers. His breath steams in the air. He nods at you, and you return it awkwardly, teeth chattering. A woman offers you a bowl of warm water, its surface shimmering with grease from last night's mutton stew. You take it gratefully, splashing the liquid onto your face and arms. It's not much, but it's warmth. The water is murky, peculiar in a place without rivers, but you rinse off some of the choking soot and smell at least a little less like a campfire. At the edge of the fire, a small kettle of yak butter tea bubbles away. Someone ladles a cup and hands it to you. It's salty and heavy on your tongue, exactly what you need to stave off the chill. You clutch the cup with both hands, feeling the warmth seep in. You sip and grit your teeth against the greasy aftertaste that clings to your palate long after the liquid is gone. Your stomach complains again. You have half a piece of dried bread in your pocket, the final scrap of last night's ration. You retrieve it and nibble at the edge until your fingers go numb. Hunger does that. It sharpens the senses, reminding you that every moment of delay could mean weakness later. The yurt flap snaps open and closed as more people emerge from the sleeping tents. They shuffle past in groups, gathering firewood, preparing saddles, checking water skins. The routine is relentless. There is no time for fancy clothing or elaborate breakfasts. Every action has purpose and urgency because here survival depends on constant motion. You tuck your bread away and turn back toward your yurt. You need to pack it up. The plan is to move camp at first light, chasing fresh grazing land for the herd. You stumble back inside, stepping around the dung pile and avoiding the rat that darts past your boot. You gather your few belongings: a strip of cured meat, a bone knife with a leather handle, a small pouch of dried herbs you traded for yesterday's chores. You fold your felt blanket and roll your rollable saddlecloth tight. The yurt must come down. You pull the central pole out and feel the structure lean dangerously. Someone must be thinking it was a poor idea to stack yurts close together on frozen ground. You lift the felt walls and clap them together. They tumble down in a heavy thud. That sound echoes across the plain. You help fold the lattice. It's heavy and splintered. You curse the craftsman who taught you this skill. You tie the lattice sections together with leather straps, making a messy bundle. Then you bundle the felt around it, like wrapping a terrible gift. All the while, your heart thumps in your chest. It's not only the cold, it's the knowledge that you have just one day to prove you belong. One day to carry water, mend harness, build campfires, herd animals, follow orders, and stay alive. One day to avoid frostbite, horse kicks, accidental curses, and the slow gnawing of fear. You step back and look at the collapsed yurt and the scattered tools. The herd stands in the distance, a dusty herd of shapes against the grey sky. You tighten your cloak and lift your chin. You nod at your fellow nomads, some of whom grin at your clumsy attempts, others who already shrug and move on. Your mouth is dry again, your bones ache, and your heart races with both dread and excitement. This is the life you chose, or the life that chose you? It really does not matter now, because today you will ride, build, herd, fight, freeze, and maybe even laugh a little. All before the sun sets again, all before you fall into another night of smoke and sheep urine. You have awakened in a Mongol Empire yurt, and this is only the beginning. You shoulder the bundle of felt and lattice poles, feeling every splinter gouge into your palms. The straps cut into your flesh as you nervously adjust the load. Someone hands you a leather water skin, and you take it gratefully, the cool animal hide pressing against your side. You swing a leg over your horse's back, the leather saddle scraping your trousers, and realize you have never balanced on an animal this large. Your heart thuds in your chest as you shift your weight, trying not to topple sideways. The horse snorts, flicks its tail, and flicks you back into place. Around you the camp is stirring. Tents unfold like ragged flowers opening to a light they barely welcome. The horses are tethered in clusters, heads low, rumps swaying, nostrils flaring in the cold air. You scan their ribs and wonder if any of them have enough strength to carry the weight of your new home. The ground is frozen and uneven. Every hoof print is a small crater. You steer your mount carefully, not wanting to land face first in the muck. A second rider falls in behind you, a teenage recruit with a bowed back and a grin that makes you uneasy. He nods as though you're both veterans. You barely nod back, hoping he doesn't notice how unprepared you feel. The yurt, lashed to two horses, sways behind you like a wounded animal. You hold the reins tight and stop thinking about what happens if the strap snaps. The breeze picks up and slices across the plain, carrying with it a swirl of frost and dust. It stings your cheeks, turns your breath to mist, and wails like a mother searching for a lost child. You tuck your head into your cloak and press forward. The steppe stretches endlessly, a sea of grey grass tipped with ice. There is no path here. You follow the riders ahead, trusting them to remember where the herd lost water yesterday. Your fingers grow numb, and your eyes water. As the wind whips the reins, you blink through tears that freeze on your lashes. Your horse shifts beneath you, impatient. You lean forward, encouraging it, whispering nonsense words that somehow feel soothing. The animal trots, each step a jolt through your spine. You grit your teeth. You are not giving up now. Ahead, you spot the herd grazing on stray tufts of grass poking through the snow. The animals look like ghost shapes, nearly blending with the ground. They lift their heads and stare at you, flicking their ears at the wind. You guide your horse into the herd, knowing your job is to keep them moving toward water. The leader, a burly ram with curved horns, snorts and starts walking. The rest follow. You prod your mount into a slow canter alongside the herd. The yurt behind you rattles somberly. You glance back and see pieces of felt puffing out where the rope is fraying. You curse under your breath and tug your cloak tighter. Nothing falls. You take that as a victory. Your legs burn from keeping pace with the pony's gait. You shift your weight, let your knees rise, and flex your calves. The stirrups cut into your ankles. You haven't ridden since before you left home, which feels like another lifetime. Your thoughts drift back to the city you left. Clean roads, solid walls, shops with doors that meant something. You squish the memory down and focus on the now. A distant cry carries across the plain. It might be the cry of a fox. It might be a warning. It might be nothing. You strain your ears, feel the wind crackle. The sky has turned from pale grey to a slate blue that promises colder nights ahead. You glance at your water skin and take a small sip. It tastes like mildew and sweat, but it is life itself. You guide the herd through a rocky patch where stones jut from the ground like broken teeth. One sheep stumbles and you spur your horse to circle back. You reach down to nudge it upright. The beast bleats, nudges you back, and stands. You almost feel pride. Then you remember you still need to find the water source. You push onward. The second rider falls in beside you again and asks if you know the way. You pretend to, point vaguely east. You don't know. Last night's map was a scroll of lines you barely deciphered. He shrugs and waves a hand. He trusts you. That thought makes your chest tighten. You swallow and focus on the herd. Finally, you crest a small rise and see the glint of open water shining in the morning light. Relief hits you so hard, your legs tremble. The herd quickens its pace, but you rein your horse in, guiding them around the muddy edge. The ground is softer here from last week's thaw. You move slowly, hoof by hoof, until each animal reaches the water. They lower their heads and drink greedily, sending ripples across the surface. You dismount and lead your pony to a nearby trough, fashioned from a hollowed log. The animal licks at the water, flicks its tongue, and snorts. You squat at the bank and cup water in your hands. You splash it on your face, cheeks, and throat. The cold burns, but it awakens you. You feel alive again. Your skin tingles from the chill. You breathe deeply, taste wood and soil and freedom. Behind you, the yurt horses are unloaded. The felt walls come off easily now that they dried on the journey. You and the teenage recruit unfold the lattice panels and stack them in a neat pile. You pass each other panels wordlessly. Your muscles protest with sharp cramps, but the movement keeps you warm. The felt walls are hung on the wooden poles, and the yurt rises behind you like a giant mushroom. The recruit seals the door flap while you arrange the stones around the base to anchor the wind. A small fire is lit in the center pole. The smoke spirals up and out through the hole at the top. The yurt's interior smells fresh again. The felt is still a bit damp from this morning's frost, but the warmth will chase away the chill soon enough. You step back and admire your handiwork, though your back screams in protest. The recruit pats your shoulder and smiles. You nod and try to think of something polite to say. All you can manage is a croak of thanks as your voice cracks like old wood. Now, you need food. The herd has grazed most of the tufts here. You must move them soon, or they will starve. But first you have to eat yourself. You head to the cooking fire, where a kettle is suspended over smoldering embers. Inside is water and a handful of dried grains. You taste one grain, and it crunches. Like sand, you swallow it anyway. The recruits around you have already sliced dried horse meat into thin strips and skewered them on sticks. They roast them until the edges curl and blacken. The smell is smoky and strange, but you guess that means it is ready. You accept a strip, squeeze a lemony berry from a leather pouch over it, and bite. The meat is tough, but your teeth clamp down with stubborn determination. You chew carefully, savoring the salty tang. Your stomach gurgles in approval. You wash it down with another swig of airag. The sourness numbs your throat. You close your eyes and lean your head back. The world tilts. For a moment, you feel weightless. The horses low softly behind you. The wind sighs past the yurt. The sun glints off the frost and promises warmth. You sit there a moment longer, enjoying the ache in your legs, the burn in your lungs, the dull throb of hunger turned satisfaction. You are still cold, still far from any city or comfort, but you have survived another stretch of morning chores. You have built home, guided animals, found water, and fed yourself with scraps and smoke. It is nearly time to move again. The horizon beckons, a vast sea of grass ready to swallow you whole. You finish your meal, wipe your hands on your tunic, and stand. Your boots are wet with mud, your cloak stiff with frost, and your mind already ticking through the next 1,000 tasks before nightfall. You take one last look at the yurt, your makeshift fortress of felt and wood. Then you swing back into the saddle and guide your horse forward. The plain stretches on, the herd follows, the day presses on. This is life on the steppe. You swing down from your horse and join the others around the morning fire. The wind is biting even at sunrise. You wrap your cloak tighter and step forward to claim your bowl. No one hands it to you. You nod at the cook and grab a wooden cup filled with airag. The liquid is sour and cold. Clumps of curd float at the top like pale islands in a grey broth. You lift it to your lips and sip. Your face puckers. The taste is sharp and salty and somehow fizzy, like old milk gone bad in the sun. You swallow, and the back of your throat tingles. You set the cup down and hope no one noticed your grimace. Beside you, a young herder chews on a long strip of dried meat. It looks sinewy and tough. You were told it used to whinny. You reach for a strip and watch his face. He eyes you coolly. You dip your fingers in the fat at the edge of the bowl and wipe them on the meat. Your teeth sink in. The texture is rubbery and tight. You chew and your jaw aches almost at once. It pulls at your muscles until your mouth feels stiff. You work at it until the piece softens enough to swallow. When you finally do, your stomach flips. You clear your throat, trying to hide the taste of iron and old blood. Someone laughs and nudges the herder. You can feel 20 sets of eyes on you. In this camp, manners matter more than words. You swallow another mouthful of air rag to wash it down. Better to chug than to sputter. Anyone who gags at breakfast is whispered about later. The cook ladles out more air rag and another strip of meat. You realize there is no choice. You either keep eating or spend the next hour fending off questions and pity. You take the meat, bite off a small piece, and force yourself to chew. Your jaw clenches. You close your eyes and think of something else. A warm bath, a soft bed. Anything but this. When you open your eyes again, the smoke from the fire has drifted low. The air tastes of ash and goat hair. A soldier knocks the bowl from the cook's hand, and it clatters on the stone. The liquid splashes and freezes in the dirt. He curses and kicks a rock. You look away. It is not your place to speak. Another herder offers you a handful of dried berries. They look black and wrinkled. You feel hopeful until you bite one, and it bursts in your mouth with a bitter tang. You spit it out and someone scoops it up and pops it in his own mouth. His eyes roll with pleasure. You are not that brave. You rub your tongue on the insides of your cheeks and reach for more air rag. The cook pours carefully now, judging your face. The wind shifts and blows smoke past your nose. You breathe in deeply and taste it in your lungs. You cough. The herder hands you a piece of flatbread made from millet. It is hard and dry. You break off a chunk and let it soften in air rag. It swells and forms a paste that slides down easily. Your throat still aches. The herd dogs circle at the edge of camp, whining for scraps. You dip a piece of meat in the bowl and toss it toward them. They snap at it and fight over every morsel. You watch the struggle, trying not to feel ashamed. In the steppe there is no waste, no extras. Everything is food. Every scrap matters. You stand and stretch your shoulders. Your hips crack. You walk to the horses and pat one on the neck. It snorts and flicks an ear. You whisper to it, and it whinnies back. You reach into your pocket and pull out a small bit of air rag curd. You offer it to the animal, and it eats from your hand. For a moment you feel a bond. Then you remember you have no extra food to spare. Back at the fire, the cook ladles out one last bowl of air rag. You take it, knowing that once you leave here, there will be no more until midday. You tip the cup back and let the sharp liquid roll over your tongue. It warms your chest. You grit your teeth and swallow hard. You find a place on a fallen log and sit beside a weathered man who's been on this land longer than anyone else. He chews slowly, his own mouth stretched around a single strip of meat. He watches you chew and nods once. You nod back, feeling a small rush of pride that you did not spit it out. Across the camp, a kid tumbles into the dirt chasing a goat. The goat kicks him lightly and runs off. The boy scrambles up, dazed, meat strip still in hand, and takes a bite. He grins. You almost laugh too. Almost. You shift on the log. The sun inches higher, and the air grows warmer. You flex your fingers, still stiff from the cold last night. You palm the empty bowl, roll it between your hands, and stand. You feel the need to move. Standing still after that breakfast feels worse than chewing rubber. The horses are ready. Their flanks gleam under frost drops. The herd is lowing softly. It is time to move. You sling the bowl onto your belt and tie it with a leather cord. You adjust your cloak, knot your scarf, and step forward. On the way out of camp, you pass the cook. He gives you a flat nod and a thumbs up. You smile back, grateful. You have survived the steppe version of a Michelin breakfast, barely. Now, saddle up. The day is waiting. Your stomach is still growling, but you will hush it with more air rag later. For now, you have places to go and things to do. The herd is moving. You join the line. One day in the Mongol Empire. One harsh breakfast down. Another hundreds of miles ahead. You push off the log and brush the grit from your leggings. The air rag bowl swings at your side like a loose bell. Your stomach rumbles as though it's forgotten you just fueled it. The others begin to break camp. Poles rattle, felt walls fold, and horses shift their weight impatiently. It is time to move. But first, there is the matter of the breakfast detritus. You carry your bowl to the central fire pit, where the cook stands with a burlap sack. He gestures for you to tip the curdled remains inside. You lift the bowl high, but not too high. No one wants a dribble of gruel to land on them. The sour lumps plop into the sack. You step back and hand your bowl to a waiting youth who jangles it with a grin. One day, you will own bowls of your own. For now, you share what you have. You rub your palms on your tunic and glance around. The herd is already forming loose columns across the plain. You feel the tug to follow. Your mouth still tastes of iron and dung. You press your fingers to your tongue and wipe away the aftertaste. Survival here is about learning to swallow regret, even if it sticks. A woman's voice calls you over to help gather the saddle straps. You jog forward, tucking your bowl under your arm. You approach the group, and they hand you gear. Thick leather straps and metal buckles, each one coated in the day's first frost. You thread a strap through the saddle horn and tighten it until the horse's ribs indent lightly under its skin. You check the knot twice. Poles and felt will come down faster if saddles slip mid-ride. You pinch your fingers at the last loop and grit your teeth against the cold bite. Your stomach lurches. You won't get another breakfast like that until midday. But until then, your job is to keep the herd moving. You mount your horse, and the world dips beneath you once more. You take the reins and guide the led mare forward. The yurt lumbers behind you, packed tight on two horses like a wooden shell. You glance back. The felt walls flap in the breeze and then fold like giant sails. You imagine the camp rolling over the plain like a slow carcass being dragged. Ahead, the herd stirs. Sheep and goats huddle in clumps, heads lowered. Their breath puffs in little clouds that drift away. A foal stands wobbly on spindly legs, a few paces off. Its mother nudges it, and it totters forward. You steer your horse around them, careful not to spook the young one. The kneecap of your breakfast pains you. You swallow. With everyone in motion, the riders fall into line. The teenage recruit from yesterday falls in beside you, matching pace. He leans forward and says something about the day's route. His words come out in quick flutters of breath. You catch hill and water and camp. You nod. You have little choice but to trust him. You spur your horse into a gentle trot, and the herd follows. The yurt poles creak as they bump along. You stare at the plain curling away under the horse's hooves. It is a grey and gold carpet, flattened and shimmering with frost. You feel the cold in your lungs with every breath. You try to breathe through your mouth, but that only makes your throat burn. Your stomach complains again. You pat your belt to check for any hidden scraps. You find nothing. You will have to wait. You push the hunger down, you focus on the horizon, you focus on the herd. You focus on staying upright. A sudden yelp echoes through the line. You jerk your horse sideways and spot a goat trapped between two boulders. Its hind leg is bent at an odd angle. It bleats in pain. A rider behind you dismounts and wrenches the goat free. Blood seeps from a cut on its chest. The goat stumbles and then trots after the herd as though nothing happened. The rider curses and mounts up, shaking his head. You swallow hard. You think of your breakfast. They call this the land of the eternal blue sky, but today the sky is gunmetal. Clouds drift low and heavy. You can almost taste snow. You keep moving. You must keep moving. After a mile, the herd reaches a steep incline. The horses pick their way up. You lean forward in the saddle, shift your weight, and guide the mare's hooves over rocky outcrops. The yurt horses grumble as they trudge upward, straps jangling. You feel each hoof lift, then drop. You feel your spine compress and decompress. At the top of the slope, you catch your breath. The plain unfolds below, a sea of grass with a river glittering far off. Someone shouts, "Tea!" and the riders pull over. The recruit hands out small wooden cups. The liquid inside is brownish lump of millet boiled in water. It is not airag. It is hot. You accept a cup and gulp it down. It burns from your lips to your lungs. You cough once, twice, and then swallow the remains. You hold the cup out for more, knees trembling. The cook ladles another serving. You sip slowly this time. The warmth spreads through you, pushing out some of the chill. A smile tugs at your lips. You realize maybe you will survive this day. But your stomach grumbles anyway. You pat your belt again. Nothing. You will ride hungry until the next stop. Mounting again, you guide your horse down the slope. The world shifts. The herd follows, slow at first, then faster. You pick up speed and ease the yurt horses into a trot. The wind rushes past your ears. You feel a surge of exhilaration. Then the hunger hits again. You double over, hand on your gut. You breathe through the pain. You pedal your horse with your heels. You swallow and taste yesterday's meal mixing with today's tea in your mouth. A rider gallops up beside you and hands you a small pouch of salted cheese. It is dense and crumbly. You nibble at a bit while riding full tilt. The salt stings your tongue. You chew slowly. For the first time, you taste something edible. You close your eyes for a moment and dream of fresh bread. You snap back to reality as the herd slows to a walk. The camp is coming into view again. They have reached a grassy knoll where the other yurts stand ready. The riders dismount and tie their horses to stakes. You follow suit, your legs trembling as you swing down. Your stomach rumbles one last time. You walk toward the cooking fire where smoke rises in lazy columns. You see spots of sour airag in the ashes. You dig through the coals with a stick. You fish out 2 half-baked pancakes of flour and water. They are crispy on the edges and gooey in the middle. You break one apart, scoop out the goo, and eat it. It sticks to your teeth, but fills your belly. You lean against a yurt pole, panting, hair plastered to your forehead. The sky is clearing now. Blue slivers appear through the clouds. A breeze rustles the grass and cools your cheeks. You feel a spark of hope. For one day you have woken in a yurt of smoke and dung, chewed horse ribs for breakfast, ridden across a frozen plain, rescued a wounded goat, endured hunger and cold, and finished the morning with a greasy pancake. You have survived breakfast. Now the real journey begins. You climb into the saddle and almost wish you hadn't. Your horse eyes you like, you owe it money. You tug on the reins, and it snorts in your face, then bucks once so hard you lift out of the seat and land with a jolt that rattles your teeth. You hiss through clenched teeth and grip the pommel, hoping your fingers will hold. When you finally settle, the horse belts out a fart that smells of last week's grass and day-old hay. You wince and press your legs tight against its sides, but it only flicks its tail and walks off as though daring you to try again. You raise your hand. The herd behind you rustles and shifts. A few other riders cough at the smell. You grit your teeth. It is only the beginning. Your saddle is a crude wooden frame, covered in leather that is rough and uneven. The seat is shaped to fit Mongol riders, but your thighs are not Mongol thighs. They rub raw. Every bump in the trail sends your skin sliding against the leather until it feels like a hot iron pressing down. You shift your weight, trying to find a spot that doesn't hurt, but there is none. You ask yourself why you thought long journeys would be easier than city chores. The horse picks up a trot, and you bounce. Up, down, up, down. Your spine compresses and releases like a spring in an old cart. After 10 minutes, you realize you have lost count of the bounces. You grit your teeth and rise in the stirrups like you saw another rider do. For 15 seconds, you float above the saddle, light as a feather, before your thighs collapse and you slam back down. A small cry escapes your lips. The horse looks back as though mocking you. You stand in the stirrups again, leaning forward. This time you keep your knees stiff and let your legs absorb the motion. After a minute, you feel the burn in your calves. It spreads to your quads, and you realize your legs are shaking. You grit your mouth shut and lean farther forward. The animal slows to a walk, then a halt. You release tension in your calves and drop back into the seat with relief so sudden it makes you gasp. The horse whinnies and twitches its ears toward the plain. You follow its gaze. The steppe rolls out in waves, grass shimmering under a midday sun. There is no shade, no road, no turning back. You shift in the saddle and adjust the reins. The leather straps creak. One of them is loose. You tug at the knot. It slips again. You groan and retie it, hands slipping on the cold metal buckle, skins scraping against rough leather. You wonder why it's here for this life. Behind you, a young soldier gallops up. He stops beside you and leans in close. You see the gleam in his eye. He points ahead and says something you barely catch. Probably a landmark. Probably the next hill. You nod and thank him, though your tongue feels glued. He urges your mount forward with a single word. The horse leaps ahead, ears pinned back. You sink low in the saddle, gripping the horse's mane for stability. You feel like a rag doll. Up ahead is the ridge you were told to cross. The slope is steep and broken, littered with rocks and clumps of frozen earth. You guide the horse toward a decent path, and it snorts. It rides up at an angle, legs sure and steady. You hold on for dear life. Stones scrape the belly of your saddle, sending vibrations that echo through your bones. You force the horse to angle around jagged rocks, careful not to startle it. A misstep could be fatal. Halfway up the ridge, the trail narrows, and a gust of wind whips across the plain. You lean into the wind, cloak wrapped tight around your throat. You smell cold dust and feel the whip of air across your cheek. The horse shifts its weight and sidles toward the edge. You clamp your knees together and press your heels into its sides. It steps back. You calm your voice, whisper nonsense words as if soothing a child. The horse slows and finds a safer path. It is the only good decision you have made so far today. You reach the top and slide down the other side into a shallow valley. The pace is now a canter. Your thighs burn with every clench. The entire valley echoes with the sound of hooves. You focus on the horse in front of you, a dark bay with a white star on its forehead. You match its rhythm, lean forward, and ride. Bouncing at canter is a different beast. It is a rolling, shimmering motion where you and the horse rise and fall together. Your chest pulses, your vision blurs at the edges, and your jaw works loose minute by minute. After 5 minutes, you feel lightheaded. You push your legs against the animal's sides, urging it to slow. It doesn't. It only tugs at the reins, as though surprised you dare to guide it. You grit your mouth shut and sink deeper into the saddle. Eventually the bay slows to a trot. You let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. You sit upright and try to rotate your shoulders. Your arms ache from holding the reins. Your wrists are stiff. You mumble a curse and pat the horse's neck. It tosses its head and farts again. You laugh, a short bark of relief. The air smells like grass, sweat, and livestock. You close your eyes for a second, letting the moment wash over you. Ahead is the next camp. You see a flicker of smoke. You glimpse tents at the edge of the ridge. The call of canines echoes in the valley. The horses behind you slow again as riders settle in. You guide your mount across the final stretch of grass. You feel the churn of your breakfast low in your gut. The closer you get, the more you hope the next meal will not be fermented milk and dried horse. As you enter the camp, you see the cook standing by the fire, stirring a pot of hot millet. A boy waves at you with a bowl and a wooden spoon. You shovel the saddle off the horse's back. Your legs shake as you slide down. You collapse beside the fire, hand on your thigh, and breathe. The ground is solid under you again. Your heart thumps like a drum. A fellow rider offers you a jug of cool water. You take it and gulp half the contents. Your throat cools instantly. You pass it back and hold your side. You lean against a wagon wheel, sweaty cloak clinging to your back. The bay nickers and drops its head, grazing on dried grass. You pat its nose and say a soft word. It nuzzles you back. You realize you have a kind of bond now. A silent understanding earned through clinging to leather and granite muscles for the past hour. Your thighs burn with indignation, but your heart flutters with pride. You saddled up. You rode. You conquered the ridge and arrived at a new camp without falling or losing your mount. You look out over the plain, feel the warmth of midday sun, and taste victory with the dust on your lips. Soon, you will wheel toward part 2 of this journey. Soon, you will mount again and ride until your bones break. But for this moment, you are grounded. Your feet touch the earth. Your saddle is off your back. And your horse, well, your horse might still hate you, but at least it slowed down. You survived saddle up or get left behind? Barely. Now catch your breath. You push the saddle forward for a moment of relief, then swing yourself back up as the bay fidgets. Today's task isn't just riding haphazardly across open land. You must herd the cattle toward the grazing ground by sunset and return before nightfall. Failure isn't an option, because failure means hungry animals and more work tomorrow. You nudge the horse with your knee. It steps off in a trot, ears swiveling for sound. The herd has spread out in patches of brown and white against the frosted grass. You wave to the other riders and fall into line behind them. Your thighs ache, but your mind clears. The day warms and the wind softens. You lean forward and feel the sun on your face. Half an hour into the ride, a rider ahead spots fresh droppings on the trail. They slow the herd, pointing to the ground like it's treasure. You dismount and kneel to examine the droppings. They're not cattle dung. They're pony droppings, fresh and moist. Someone must have turned loose a foal overnight. You swallow and stand. The herd shifts, as each animal hesitates at the missing foal's absence. You feel a pang for the little one lost in the grass. You push sorrow away. There is no time for sentiment. You remount and guide the nearest horse into position. You will edge the herd back the way you came until you find the foal. The wind carries a faint sound that might be a whinny. You urge your mount faster. Legs burning, you gallop across the plain, hooves pounding, your stomach lurches at the speed. You grip the reins and don't look down. A shape appears on a rise. You drop to a lope and recognize the foal, its coat dusted with frost. It whinnies in relief and charges toward you in hobbling steps. You slow your horse to a walk and reach over to scoop the foal's rump with a hand. The foal nuzzles your palm roughly. You laugh despite your sore muscles and tired mind. You never thought you'd be thankful to cuddle a tangled pony in the middle of nowhere. You guide the foal back to the herd, and everyone cheers. The bay whinny neigh and kicks at the air. The other riders stamp their heels and cheer louder. You feel proud. You led the rescue. You drew your horse into a gallop on borrowed energy. Your heart is hammering, but you ride on. The herd folds back into formation. You watch the foal run to its mother, belly pressing against her side. The herd's tension eases. The riders nod your way with respect. You tip your head and settle into the saddle once more. The day presses forward and you must keep pace. You follow the leader along a winding trail toward the nearest river. Each bend reveals more horses and cattle picking at the grass. The ground slopes downward. The valley below glints with water. It is a welcome sight. Everyone breaks to a trot, then to a walk. You feel your arms shake, but you guide your horse down the incline carefully. Rocks slide under hoof, horses slip. You grip your reins tight and guide your mount around slick spots. At the riverbank, the horses drop their heads and slurp. Cattle push forward, banging into each other. You dismount and drag the foal's mother into the shallow water. The cool liquid laps at her knees. You splash water on yourself. Your boots squelch. You lick the water off your lips. It tastes clean and fresh and stings your scars from yesterday's falls. A group of riders uproots grass to throw to the animals. You grab handfuls of green blades and toss them. The cattle chew eagerly. You lean on the saddle horn and stretch your back. Your spine cracks and you moan. The air is cool on your skin. You close your eyes for a moment. The world is alive with crunching grass, slurping water, lowing cattle. For a brief time, nothing aches. A rider approaches with 2 leather flasks of kumis, one for you and one for him. You take a flask and unscrew the stopper. The kumis is thick and tart. You sip and feel the burn slide down your throat. You hand the flask back, and he drinks at a steady clip. He tells you the next camp is on the far side of the river, near an outcrop of flat stones that catch the moonlight. You nod. You tell him thanks. Words still feel strange in your mouth. You finish your kumis and toss the flask back. You remount and ride along the bank toward the flat stones. The cattle follow at a steady pace. The sun climbs higher and the day grows hot. Your cloak feels heavy on your shoulders. You tug off the top layer and drape it over the saddle. The wind stirs cold currents that warn of rain or snow by night. Crossing the river is easy. Shallow silts leave hoofprints. Riders guide horses through the water up to their bellies. You hold the reins high so they don't drown. Something nips your boot from below. A fish? You shudder. No time to wonder. Once across, you push the herd onto dry ground and head up the slope toward the outcrop. The stones gleam pale grey in the sunlight. You feel the hump of your saddle rub again and climb higher. Your thighs scream in protest. You smile. You are alive. The herd settles at the top. Riders dismount and tie horses to nearby stakes. You slide off and rub your thighs. You find a flat stone to sit on. You set your bowl of airag and a strip of meat beside you. Someone hands you a piece of dried fish. You chew slowly. The bread heats in your satchel. You pull out a chunk and dip it in airag. It softens and you bite. For once, the taste is simple. Grain and milk. You lean back on the stone and watch the valley stretch beneath you. A gentle breeze washes across the plain. The herd grazes in peaceful clumps. The sky is wide and empty, a dome of pale blue. You close your eyes, and for a moment, the aches and hunger and cold all fade. Then, a gust kicks up dust, and you sneeze. You open your eyes and realize that respite is always temporary. You rise and gather your gear. The next leg awaits. The outcrop is only a resting point. You still have miles to ride before camp for the night. You swing back into the saddle. Your body trembles, thighs burning anew. You steady yourself and guide your horse forward. Ridge calls. The herd follows. You and your horse move as one, bouncing along the stones until the trail widens and the plain returns. The midday sun casts sharp shadows on the grass. Your shirt is damp at the back, your hair plastered to your forehead. You smile despite yourself. You hate riding. But today you have learned that even a hating rider can master a horse for a time. You press on across the plain toward the next yurt site, your jaw already aching at the thought of dinner. The day is far from over. You will ride until dusk, build another camp, herd more cattle, and face more challenges you cannot imagine. But for now, take this moment. Feel the rhythm of hooves, the stretch of leather beneath, the wind across your face. You survive by the skin of your teeth and the strength of your will. Keep it tight. Keep riding. Keep living. You press the brim of your felt hat lower over your eyes and squint at the horizon. No shade in sight. No clouds climb the sky. Just you and the endless sea of grass, rippling under the merciless sun. It feels like a giant torch has been hung overhead, baking everything in its path. Your shoulders ache from holding yourself up against the glare, and your throat already feels parched. You lift a hand to your face and feel the heat radiating off your cheekbones. Your skin carries a dull throb, a warning that today's ride will leave you bright red. You breathe through your mouth because even inhaling shallow sucks in fire. When you blink, your eyelids feel like they're brushing hot coals. It is only mid-morning, and the sun is already at its peak power. Your neck itches beneath your hat's brim. The felt strap presses tight under your chin, trapping sweat and invisible pests against your skin. You scratch at the spot, then glance around to see if anyone noticed. No one cares. Here, lice are a fact of life. You pretend the crawl isn't happening. You pretend the itch is nothing more than a mosquito bite. But each jerk of your hand only rubs more grit into the little red bumps. You tug the hat higher and rub your hand across your brow. The felt is hot enough to steam. You lift it off for a moment, hoping to let your sweaty hair breathe. Instead, you reveal a crown of sweat-drenched straw tangled in your hair. You slam the hat back down. Better the headache than having the whole camp see you with hair plastered your forehead. Your horse stamps its hoof and shuffles impatiently. You settle back into the saddle and guide it forward. Each step is a jolt against the leather seat, already growing warm under the sun. You shift your hips, trying to find a sliver of cool, but it is hopeless. The sun has cooked the leather like bacon on a griddle. You grit your teeth and force yourself to keep moving. Ahead, you spot a small rise that promises shade of sorts. You urge the horse forward, leaning into the ride. The ground dips and then lifts. A single clump of grass stands tall and casts a 6-inch shadow over the plain. You guide the mare into that tiny oasis, dismount, and press your hand against the warm blade. It wavers in the hot air like a mirage. You stand under that slice of shadow and close your eyes. It feels like relief. Barely. Your neck, however, has other ideas. The felt strap digs into the hollow of your throat. You yank your hat off again and pull a scrap of linen from your belt. You wrap it around your neck, hoping the fabric will catch the sweat and stop the constant slide of the hat strap. The linen is coarse and smells like goat hair, but it is better than raw flesh rubbing against wool. You adjust the wrap until it pinches less and tie a loose knot. A gust of wind sweeps across the plain and slaps dust into your face. You blink and grab your hat for fear it will blow away. The dust catches under your scarf and stings your neck as you inhale. You cough, reach up, and wipe your nose with the back of your hand. You taste grit and salt. You realize halfway through that you have been holding your breath. You let it out in a hiss. A rider passes you at a trot, his pony thick with sweat. He nods and tips his hat in greeting. You return the gesture. His face is red and peeling at the cheeks. You know yours will follow. You grip the pommel and lift yourself back into the saddle. The smooth leather feels scorching hot. You shift your legs forward until you find a patch that isn't blazing. It slides under your trousers, feels sticky, but is tolerable. The herd moves past the rise and into a shallow valley where a trickle of water runs. Horses stretch their necks and lap at the stream. You guide your mount down and plunge your hat into the water. The fabric hisses as it fills. You lift it out and slap it against your thigh. Steam rises. You put it back on your head. The wet felt clings to your scalp and drips cold relief down your neck. For a moment, you feel almost human again. A friend from camp approaches on a chestnut mare. She hands you a small pail of water. "Wash your face," she says. You pour it over your forehead and cheeks. Cool liquid runs down your temples and into your eyes. You blink until the stinging subsides. You dip your fingers in the pail and rub them through your hair. You scoop water behind your ears. The simple act feels miraculous. But the heat returns the instant you remount. The valley amplifies the sun's strength. The trickle of water behind you is already stinging your ankles from splashing it there. You adjust your scarf again, but now it is soaked. It clings unpleasantly to your throat. Your neck stings from where you scratched at the gnawing itch earlier. It looks bright with angry red welts. You wonder how long the scars will last. You spur your horse on until you crest another rise. The horizon flickers in heat haze. No shade appears, no clouds drift in. Only the vast expanse of grass and the relentless blaze in the sky. You press the horse forward, free of the tiny shadow behind you. You grip the reins and set your jaw. Your neck stings, your eyes burn, your thighs ache, and your back protests with each bump. And yet you ride on, because this is the steppe, and the steppe does not wait. It blazes, it itches, it bruises, and it mocks anyone who thinks shade is unnecessary or neck pain trivial. You hold your head high, shade your eyes with one hand, and guide your horse across the blinding plain. The sun climbs higher, the heat thickens like syrup. Your breath comes in sharp pants, each one tasting of sweat and dust. Your neck itches relentlessly. The felt hat now feels like a prison. But you do not remove it. You cannot. Without it, you would fry, you would blister, you would catch a fever, and die by sunset. So you endure. You shift your neck slowly, rub your hand across the itch, and blink through the glare. You keep moving toward the next rise, the next water, the next hope of shade that might not exist. You ride in the heart of the sun, with a sunburn creeping across your cheeks, and a neck that feels like it wants to tear away from your skull. You ride because the herd behind you depends on it, because the camp ahead needs water, because survival is about making it through one more mile of open grass under a merciless sky. And as you ride, you vow that tonight you will soak in the yurt entrance breeze, slather fat on your neck, and maybe even laugh at the memory of how your neck looks now, bright red, mottled, and raw from a day of riding without shade. You press on beneath the relentless sky, each stride of your horse pressing the heat deeper into your skin. Your neck burns like it's been branded, the hairline itching where you scratched raw flesh into a grim pattern. You try not to think about it. You focus on the next hill, the next patch of grass, the next breath of air that isn't scorching. The herd moves steadily ahead. You guide your mount in and out of tufts of grass that offer no shade but do offer the chance to brush your fingers through soft blades. You bend low, reach down, and grab handfuls to toss aside. It barely makes a dent, but you feel for a moment like you're clearing a path rather than chasing sunlight. Your hat slides down your forehead again, the wet felt droops against your brow. You lift it, but shine of sweat and dust glues it back. You pull it off and shake your head. The air whips at your hair, flinging strands into your eyes. You blink them away. You place the hat on the back of your neck, letting the sweat run down your back rather than soak the felt. It feels cooler there. You hope it helps. Up ahead, a rider waves you over. You approach slowly, legs trembling. She points to a leather satchel strapped to a saddle. Inside is a small jar of animal fat mixed with crushed herbs. The old healer in camp swears it will soothe sunburn. You thank her and take the jar. You lift the lid and sniff. It smells like old garlic and something herbal you cannot name. You tuck it into your belt for later. Your horse snorts and paws. You scratch its neck, it flinches. You laugh and apologize. It may have as many sores as you do. You tighten the girth strap. You cannot afford another trouble mid-ride. The rise ahead looks promising. One of the other riders stops and points to a cluster of rocks that cast a narrow shadow the size of 2 adults. You guide your horse toward it. The ground slopes steeply. You lean back, press your heels down, and let the horse do the work. It picks its way over stones, hooves clattering, and you hold on. At the top is a U-shaped rock formation. A sliver of shade hugs its inside curve. You slip from the saddle, legs weak from the sun and constant movement, and scramble to the cool stone. You press your back against it. The rock surface is smooth and relic cool. You hear a sigh behind you. The other riders collapse around you, gasps of relief echoing. In the middle of the steppes glare, this rock is your oasis. You sit cross-legged in the shade and open the satchel. The jar of salve glints in the light. You unscrew the lid. A soft lump of white fat and green flecks awaits. You scoop a fingerful and smear it onto your neck. Immediately you feel the cool oil soak into raw skin. The herbs sting slightly, then numb. You close your eyes, let your head lean against the shade. The pain dulls. You are grateful. Around you the herd nuzzles at the rock, grazing on clumps of grass that poke through the stony soil. The clatter of bits of debris under their teeth joins the low hum of sun-baked insects. You taste the grease on your finger and wipe the rest onto a scrap of cloth. Your neck thanks you. For now, a rider passes you a water skin. You tip it to your mouth and chug, feeling the cool water splash over your tongue and down your throat. You exhale, feeling the moisture soothe your insides. You drip a few drops on your forehead. It will evaporate fast, but it still feels like a blessing. You look around and notice sores and scratches on everyone. One man's cheek is peeling like an old scroll. A woman's nose is a bright red wedge against her brown skin. You reach up and pinch a loose flap of skin on your own neck. It tingles. You swallow back the urge to scratch it off. Instead, you brush it with the cloth and leave it to heal. The silence under the rock's shadow is heavy. You hear faint laughter as someone cracks a joke about sunburned scars looking like tiger stripes. You chuckle. It is not a great joke, but under the circumstances it is enough. You lean back, propping yourself on your elbows, and let the moment stretch. Eventually the sun moves and the rock's shadow slinks away. Hard edges of shade dissolve into the plain. You lift yourself and wipe the salve off your palms. You pop the lid back on the jar and secure it. It rattles against your belt as you stand. The leader calls the herd. You remount with care, legs shaking. The saddle press burns again, but the shade's memory carries through. You guide your horse from the rock and into the flow of the herd. The world shimmers in heat waves. A stray breeze carries dust and the faint scent of yak dung. You ride in silence up the next slope. The horizon dips away, and then rises again. It is never-ending. You spot another patch of scrub brush that promises a moment of cool. You quicken your pace, urging your horse onward. Each step is a promise of relief. Each jolt is a reminder of discomfort. After a few minutes, you enter the scrub. Branches snap under hoof. You ride beneath low limbs that block the sun. Leaf shadows dance on your skin. It is faint relief, but welcome. You duck under a particularly low branch, scrape your shoulder, and swear. You emerge on the other side with leaves in your hair and a grin on your face. The herd follows. The horses nip at brush, and horses slow to a walk. You glance around. This spot is too small for a yurt. No one will camp here, but as a midday break, it is perfect. You dismount and follow the group to a circle of stones. You kneel and press your palms to the ground. The soil is warm but forgiving. You pat it twice and stand. Your hat is dusted with grit. You run your hands through your hair again before pulling it off. You wring the hat's sweat into the dirt. The damp felt cools more as the moisture seeps out. You place it back on your head. It is not perfect, but still better than raw sun. One of the riders offers you a handful of dried fish. You take 2 pieces. Each one is brittle and salty. You chew slowly, letting the fibers break apart. The salt stings the wound on your neck, but you grit your teeth and swallow. The protein helps. You nod in thanks and pass the remainder to a hungry child who jangles a small blade. You drink again from your water skin, careful not to chug too fast. Your heart still races from the gallop, but it slows now. You feel your pulse ease. You blink against the sun's glare as your eyes adjust to dust in the air. Everything feels fuzzy. You pat at your eyelids. You vow to buy sunglasses if ever you reach a market again. You lean against a saddle propped on a rock. You feel the salve working. The sting is now a dull ache. You rotate your head slowly, feeling the relief. It is still hot, but now it feels livable. You swallow a lump in your throat. You've come this far. A voice calls the riders forward. You set your cup and fish scraps aside. You tie your hat strap under your chin to keep it on. You swing back into the saddle and grip the reins. The herd shuffles forward. The scrub brush falls away. The plain opens up. The sun stands overhead. You lean forward, set your heels against the horse's flanks, and ride again. The burning sun is your constant companion. Your neck will throb long into the night, but you lean into the pain and carry on. Because shade is rare, relief is fleeting, and only the stubborn survive. You slip away from the edge of camp just as the herd dogs settle into their midday snooze. Your stomach twists for reasons that have nothing to do with hunger. You scan the plain for any rise in the ground, where you might find a moment of privacy and spot a small mound a few yards from the yurts. Each step crunches through frost-hardened grass and brittle earth. Every breath feels like inhaling shards of ice and dust. When you reach the top of the mound, you squat and wonder who first decided hills made a good public restroom. You pull a small gnarled trowel from your belt, the only tool you have for digging, and jab it into the frozen dirt. The blade strikes hard rock beneath a thin layer of soil. You curse under your breath, yank it free, and pound the handle until the tines finally bite. You work through compacted earth, gravel, and ice, sweat stinging your eyes as a cold wind cuts across the plain. Slowly, the hole deepens. You scoop out lumps of frozen ground until it is just large enough to hide your offering, wide enough to cover your tracks, high enough to hold your weight. Each handful of soil throws fine particles into your mouth and hair. You cough, you spit, you press down the hole's edges so no loose dirt shows. At last, the hole measures only 6 inches deep and a foot across, enough for one person. You tug at your trousers, lower yourself, and let nature do the rest. The wind gusts, and your discarded cloak flaps like a banner behind you. You clutch the trowel for balance as your teeth chatter. You stare at the grass that stretches to the horizon, waiting for a crow or a wolf or some witness to seal your shame. You finish quickly, stand, and jiggle your toes to chase away the chill. You pull a scrap of wool from your pouch and dab at your skin, careful not to leave any trace of what just happened. The cloth becomes damp and dark within seconds, smelling faintly of metal and old dung. You fold it, stash it in your bag, and pull your trousers back into place. Now you have to hide your work. You pick up handfuls of loose dirt and toss it into the hole until it is nearly level with the surrounding ground. The wind scatters your efforts, restoring patches of grass that never grew. You shovel the rest of the snow over the spot, flatten it with your boot, and hope it passes as untouched terrain. You brush off your hands and look around. No one is watching. You exhale, your breath forming a swirl of steam in the cold air. Your feet ache from standing in the frozen earth. Your back and thighs protest from squatting so long with no support. You stuff the trowel back in your belt, its handle pressing into your hip. You trudge back toward camp, head ducked, each step an exercise in dignity. As you near the yurts, you pass a small child playing with a stick and a goat. You raise a hand in greeting, but catch yourself. This is private business, not something to share. You lower your gaze and walk on. Halfway back, the low growl of a wolf skitters across your nerves. You freeze. Your heart pounds. You spin around, toes catching in a frozen clump of grass. But there is no wolf, only a tumbleweed caught in a breeze. You swallow hard and force yourself to keep moving. Out here, every weakness can become someone else's advantage. You return to camp to find the cook ladling water from a clay jug. You elbow your way forward, eager to wash your hands. The water is cool but tinted grey, flecked with grit. You glimpse your reflection in the ripples. Wind-burned cheeks, frozen snot caked at your nostrils, eyes rimmed red. You rub fistfuls of water over your palms until they sting. A fellow nomad hands you a scrap of linen to dry your hands. You press it against your neck, wiping away sweat and grime. You glance at your hat, now wet and limp from water drips. You spin it lightly and fling lint into the grass. You drop it at your feet and let a breeze pick it up again. You breathe in the camp's aromas: burning goat dung, sizzling meat, coarse wool, and dust. They mingle into a scent unique to this place. You straighten your cloak and take a steadying breath. You have survived your first solo expedition. No line of sight exposed you, no animal found you. You have proven you can handle even the most basic act of privacy. You step back into the circle of yurts. A cook nods at you as steam rises from a pot of millet cooking over the fire. You feel a flicker of pride. Here, every small success matters. You walk through the herd of resting horses, each one grazing with steady munching. You pat one on the neck as you pass. It nuzzles your hand, then flicks its ear in alarm at your approach. You chuckle and whisper an apology. You return to the riders waiting at the yurt doors. They glance your way, and one offers a quiet thumbs up. You nod in thanks, adjusting your pack. You carry your modest victory into the heart of camp, ready for the next task. You have left no trace behind. You have done what no one else bothered to do. In a place where survival is measured in small wins, this was one of yours. Now, mount your horse again and prepare to move on. The ridge looms ahead. Sunburn and neck pain still cling to you, but at least you conquered that hill, and you will carry this strange triumph with you into the next challenge. You stand and brush loose dirt from your trousers, the wind tugging at the fabric as though eager to expose your secret. You look around the mound one last time. No scattering of soil gives you away. No stray clump of grass marks the spot. You allow yourself a breath of satisfaction and tuck your trowel back into your belt. Your feet crunch across frozen grass as you head back toward camp. Each step jars the ache in your legs. You remind yourself that every step away from that hole is a step toward dignity regained. Behind you, the plain stretches empty and silent. Wolves might lurk at its edges, ravens might spy on you, yet nothing moves. It is as though the land itself respects your privacy. You rejoin the circle of yurts at the edge of camp. Smoke curls from cooking fires. Horses graze on sparse tufts of grass between frozen patches. Riders stand around, talking low or simply staring at the horizon. You hear the crackle of burning dung in the central fire and the low mutter of someone stirring a pot of boiling water. You look down at your hand, still stained with a bit of dark soil, and wipe it on your tunic, leaving a small smudge. No one notices. You nod at a fellow nomad who glances your way, then turns back to the herd. You move closer to the fire for warmth. It is midday now, and the sun is higher, but the air is still thin and cold. You cup your hands around the flames and let the heat rise into your palms. Your skin tingles with relief. You rub your fingers together, trying to remove the last bits of grit. A small child tugs at your cloak, offering you a bowl of barley porridge. You accept it gratefully, grateful for food that is soft and warm. You scoop a spoonful and blow on it. The steam rises and fogs your vision for a moment. You sip it. The taste of grain, salt, and fat calms your stomach. As you eat, a group of riders approaches from the north ridge. They return from herding. Their horses' coats are slick with sweat. They call out greetings and pass around skins of fresh water. You finish your porridge and drink deeply from a goat-hide canteen. The water is icy but clean. You splutter and cough, then laugh. It is strange to breathe without grit in your throat. The returning riders drop to one knee and scoop handfuls of water to splash on themselves. You follow suit, splashing water on your face and neck. The cold liquid hits the red marks on your neck, and you wince as fresh stinging joins the old burn. You press your hand over the spots and blink tears into the sun. The sensation is sharp but honest. You let your head fall back and close your eyes. A rider waves you over and points toward the herd. A wounded sheep limps behind the flock, its leg bleeding. You rise and move to help. The spot where you evacuated is already forgotten. You kneel beside the injured sheep and inspect the wound. You dig in your pouch for a scrap of cloth. You wrap the leg above the wound to calm the bleeding. You wet the cloth with water and bind the leg below the wound to support it. The sheep bleats softly and you pat its head. A nomad hands you a pinch of crushed wild herb. You sprinkle it on the wound. The sheep shudders and then relaxes. You stand and wipe your hands on your trousers. Your neck still throbs, but now you feel a flicker of pride. You have helped save a life today. You linger by the herd as they graze. The sun has climbed nearly overhead. A few clouds drift in from the west, tiny puffs against the blue sky. You squint and wonder if they offer real shade or just a tease. For now, they offer nothing more than names on the horizon. A rider blows a horn 3 times. It is time to move. You mount your horse and guide it forward. The herd moves as one, following the rhythm of hooves and occasional shouts. You settle into the saddle, adjusting your cloak, easing the tightness under your chin. You think of the patch of land behind you where you dug the hole. No one will ever find its secret. Ahead lies a narrow path between rocky outcrops. You steer the herd through it. Horses step carefully over stones. Sheep jostle together. Dust rises in small clouds where hooves strike. You see a gap in the rocks ahead large enough to cast a shadow across half the trail. You urge your horse forward and slip into the fractured shade. The cool darkness feels heavenly after the glare of open grass. You look back and catch the glint of relief on riders' faces as they pass through the shadow. For a moment, the herd slows, the temperature drops. You close your eyes and breathe. The rocks hold the cool. Grass grows where the sun does not reach. You reach up and rub your neck against the cool rock wall. It soothes the burn and the itch at once. You lean your cheek against the stone. It feels alive, under your skin, textured and steady. A small bird darts out of a crevice above your head and flutters across the path. It lands on a patch of moss and watches you with bright eyes. You nod, and the bird chirps before flying out into the sunlit grass. You smile. Even here, wildlife finds respite from the sun. The shade ends, and the herd emerges onto a plateau. The animals low softly and raise their heads to the breeze. You feel the sun's warmth return in a rush. Your hat slides back onto your skull and you tuck the strap under your chin. You brace yourself against the heat. The next camp lies ahead on a gentle slope. You guide the herd there. The shepherd's yurt is already unpacked and a cooking fire awaits. Smoke drifts in lazy tendrils. You lead your horse to a tethering stake. You lift yourself out of the saddle and massage your thighs. They ache from riding, and from the squat you took away from prying eyes. You flex your neck, rotating it until it cracks. Pain blooms, then fades to a dull hum. You gather near the yurt entrance. As the camp settles, riders stoke the fire, unpack supplies, and catch their breath. The cook ladles stew into bowls. You step forward to receive a portion. Inside is mutton, potatoes boiled to softness, and a few wilted herbs plucked from a pack. You accept the bowl and find a flat stone to sit on. You eat slowly, savoring each bite in contrast to the harsh flavors of breakfast. The stew is warm, salty, and filling. You carry the bowl to your lips again and drink the last of it. You press your hand to your belly. It is a good ache. You smile at the cook, then at the horizon glowing with afternoon light. Behind you, a child practices throwing a rock at a tin can. You step over and spend a few moments teaching the child how to measure distance, aim, and release. The rock sails past the can and clatters against the yurt. The child laughs and runs to retrieve it. You clap. As you stand, a fresh gust sweeps the camp. Grass bends, smoke bends. You feel the wind on your neck and hope your salve holds. You pat the spot gently, and press your hat back into place. One hill and one rescue and one campsite later, you realize that the day is not half over. You have faced the toilet hill, saved a sheep, galloped the ridge, burned your neck, and found shade in rock. You have outwitted wind and predators, staved off hunger, and kept your secrets. Yet, there is more to come. Later, we'll bring another challenge, another fight with the steppes' harshness. But for now, you have learned the value of privacy, of shade, of a clean bowl, and a full stomach. You are not arrogant enough to call it comfort, but you will take it. You rise and dust yourself off. You slung a cloak over your shoulders. You feel the soft tug of the reins in your hand. You mount again, heart steady, neck wrapped, ready for whatever the plane throws at you next. You push past the cluster of tents to reach the War Council yurt. The flap hangs limp in the midday heat, so you slip inside and find yourself facing a circle of grim faces, all painted with the symbols of their clans. The air is thick with smoke from the central brazier. A low fire crackles on a bed of stones and sends clouds of grey ash swirling above the warriors' heads. Around you, the scent of goat fat drips from skewers and pools on the wooden planks beneath the council seats. It mixes with the coppery tang of fresh blood and the sour stench of fermented mare's milk. Your boots stick to the floor where fat and spit cover the wood. The council members sit cross-legged or lean against wooden posts. Their arms and faces bear fresh scars. Their mounts wait outside, restless in the heat. They have ridden far to gather here. You stand at the edge of the circle, hoping someone will notice you or at least spare you a seat. No one does. You keep your eyes forward and pretend the heat and the smells are normal. A general coughs and spits into a bowl of water. The spit lands with a soft plop and ripples the surface. You watch it mix with grit and blood, and imagine it sloshing back into his throat. He grips a curved knife and slides a hunk of roasted goat from a bone. You see a smear of dried toenail clippings on the blade near the hilt. You choke on the scent of old sweat and ale dust. You wonder why your heart pounds so hard. It is fear, or disgust, or both. The general lifts the meat to his mouth and bites. Chewing, he nods in approval. You see the bone fragments crack between his teeth and feel a shiver crawl down your spine. You swallow hard and shift your gaze to the hides stretched on the wall. They bear rough maps of villages and grazing lands. Lines and symbols mark paths for raids and pasture. The council argues over a distant river crossing. Voices rise and fall like battle cries. A voice next to you speaks in a low growl. An older warrior points at a map and argues that the route near the eastern ridge is too narrow for his cavalry. Another laughs and says that narrow passes are perfect for ambush. They spit curses at each other in rapid fire. You catch bits of their words. River too deep, horses weary, winter coming, loot or no loot. You try to piece together their plan, but the chopping sounds distract you. Behind them, a cook holds the carving knife, slicing meat from a fresh goat carcass hanging from a wooden beam. Each slice lands on a smoker's plate next to him. The meat is slick with fat. The cook's apron is stained dark. He uses the same blade to lift goat kidneys and to scrape under his own nails. Every now and then he rubs the back of his hand on the fabric of his sleeve and wipes the knife free of debris. You feel a queasy churn in your stomach at each wipe. A youth seated at the far side of the circle slaps his bare leg and yelps. A scorpion scuttled out of the wood and bit him. Someone grabs the youth by the arm and says, "A quick prayer." A Jaeger stands and flicks dust over the wound with his boot. The youth gasps but laughs when he sees the tiny drop of blood. He is as tough as his elders. You glance at your own arm. You feel a dozen tiny itches from last night's ride, and wonder if any of them have taken root. A chieftain with a braid down his back speaks with a booming voice. He demands loyalty. He speaks of honor and the blood of ancestors. He pounds the hide map with his fist. The goat fat and spit around him splash. You flinch back, afraid the spatter might reach you. You wipe a bead of sweat from your brow and find it sticky. You glance at a cup on the ground. It holds tea made from goat fat and crushed herbs. The color is murky. You dare not taste it. Meanwhile, the War Council debates who will lead the vanguard, who will guard the supply yurt, and who will stay behind and hunt game. Each position carries glory or disgrace. The last man to return is executed. You feel a cold knot in your gut. You think of the hill you dug this morning and the sheep you saved. That felt like small victories to this. The general with the toenail knife stands and addresses the circle. His voice is calm, but it carries a threat. He says the spoils of an entire valley are within their reach if they act now. He rubs his hands together and smears grease across his knuckles. He gestures to the map. He wants a night attack, a moonless raid through the river pass. Surprise and speed will win the day. He leans close, eyes blazing. You feel the heat of his breath and realize you have hardly breathed yourself. A boy with a quiver slung across his back tilts his head and asks how they will mark the river during the attack. The general smiles. He tosses a handful of blood-soaked straw onto the map. The smudge covers the river. The boy nods, satisfied. You feel a trickle of dread. You have never used that river. You have never stormed a hamlet at night. You swallow the lump in your throat. Another chieftain, younger, with a single gold ring, stands and spits on the ground. He calls the plan reckless. He says the wagons will get stuck in mud. He says the horses will be mired to knees. He curses the general's bloodlust. He stamps his foot, and laughter rises from the circle. A few men agree that bad weather may doom them. Others call him a coward. The debate grows louder. As they argue, the cook passes a bowl of fermented milk cheese, bits of blood and sinew floating in it. A man reaches out, dips a chunk of cheese, and pops it in his mouth. You close your eyes and imagine the stink of rotting dairy in your mouth. You fight the urge to vomit. The man beside you gulps 2 more pieces and waves for the bowl to be refilled. Swallowing seems the only polite option. The chieftain with the gold ring grabs the bowl and flips it onto the ground. The contents splatter, dribbling across the dirt floor. He steps back and scoffs. He says they argue over wine and cheese while their enemies gather strength. He warns the general that hesitation is death. The general stares him down and then smiles with a glint of triumph. The debate ends as both men return to their seats. Silence falls, and you hear only the hiss of the fire and the low snort of a tethered horse outside. Everyone eyes the general. He lifts his goat-fat knife and makes a single slash across the map. A new path appears in red. No one speaks for a moment. Then they nod. The decision is made. The War Council is adjourned. Men stand and stretch out cramped limbs. They divide into groups. They sling jugs and slurp water. They spit and wipe their mouths, leaving streaks of blood and fat on their cloaks. You step back out of the yurt, blinking into the daylight. The smell of goat fat and blood follows you. You take a deep breath and taste the cool air. You realize that war is not about honor or glory. It is about blood and fear and grease. You feel both sick and excited. You realize you will ride with these men tonight. You will clatter down muddy trails beneath a dark sky. You will risk being the man who returns last, or not at all. You rub your neck where the salve rests beneath your scarf. You feel the sting of sunburn there, and remember that discomfort pales compared to the cost of battle. You walk back toward your horse. Tonight you will carry that knife. Tonight you will eat the same meat. Tonight you will face the choice of life or death. The War Council has spoken. The plains await your courage. In the stall beyond the camp you mount your horse. Your thighs protest from yesterday's ride and today's sunburn. The horse tosses its head and lets out a long snort. You settle into the saddle again. You grip the reins and glance back at the beige yurt that holds echoes of power and blood. You kick the horse forward and it trots into the gathering dusk. The council's plans will unfold tonight. The smell of goat fat and blood will guide your path, and every step will be a test of your will to survive. You stumble on a hidden rock as you guide your horse through tall grass and your leg bucks sideways. The snap echoes through your bones like a broken branch. You collapse onto the ground in a burst of pain, so intense it crushes the world into a single moment. You clutch at your calf, and the agony makes your vision blur. You taste copper and grit in your mouth. The herd gallops on without you, hooves thundering into the distance. Your leg throbs in waves that feel as if molten iron is pouring through the bone. You gasp for air, each breath rattling your ribs. You try to rise, but your weight collapses onto the injury. You cry out and roll onto your back in a pool of grass and sweat. The sky swims above you, a smear of pale blue. You feel dizzy and nearly lose consciousness as the world tilts. Moments later, you hear footsteps crunching the grass. A figure leans over you. It is the camp's healer, staggeringly drunk, barely able to steady himself. His grin is wide and unsettling, teeth stained yellow. He carries a gourd of warm kumis and a long knife glazed with something dark. He squats beside you and pours the rancid horse milk over your wound without warning. The liquid soothes for a split second, then stings like molten acid. You scream into the back of a sheepskin the healer thrusts at you. The coarse wool catches your cry and muffles it into a squelch. The healer laughs, a deep rumble that vibrates in your chest. You feel his breath on your face mixed with the sour odor of fermented milk. Your eyes fill with tears, and you bite down on the wool to stop the sound leaking out. He props you up against a saddle turned on its side. He squints at your leg as though inspecting a piece of meat. You feel the bone beneath your fingers is at an impossible angle. You want to shudder away, but he grips your ankle and twists. Your jaw snaps open into a silent howl. The world tilts again. You force yourself to breathe around the pain. Suddenly, the knife flashes. He slices into the flesh around the break without any anesthesia. The cut is precise, but savage. You feel each tendon and muscle sever with a clean rip. Your vision tunnels. You clench your fist and feel the blood trickle over your knuckles. You stifle another scream. The healer leans close and mutters a prayer in his guttural tongue. You cannot understand the words, but you feel their heat. He pours more kumis into the incision. The liquid spills down your shin, mingling with dark blood and damp grass. The pain surges through your head, and you taste bile in your throat. You swallow, and the world tilts again. You catch sight of the healer's boots, worn and caked with mud. He presses a strip of cloth onto the wound, and begins to wrap it tightly, the cloth biting into your flesh with each turn. Your legs tremble, and you feel faint. The healer steps away and stands, arms akimbo, admiring his work. He wobbles and almost falls over you, then steadies himself with a grunt. He points at a yurt in the distance and mutters that you must rest. He staggers off, the knife still in his hand, humming a drunken tune. You wonder if he realizes you will rely on that ragged bandage to keep you alive. Your world narrows to the throb in your leg. Each heartbeat sends a fresh wave of fire up your thigh. You roll onto your side, groaning, and slide the sheepskin out from under your face. You wipe at tears and grit. Your fingers find the cloth wrapped around your shin. It is sticky and warm. You press it against your chest, feeling the pulse in your calf. The sun shifts overhead. Shadows creep across the grass. You taste dust in your mouth and smell sweat in the air. You lie still and count each labored breath. The steps of hurried horses echo in the distance. You try to raise your head, but pain flares in your torso. You close your eyes again. Somewhere a bell rings. It might be for dinner or a warning. You cannot tell. Your mind drifts between colors blinding white, deep crimson, pale green. You see flickers of memory. The goat you saved, the shade in the rocks, the flock scattered on the ridge. You wonder if the healer's prayer did anything at all. You drift again and feel the ground shift beneath you. A hand grips your shoulder. You open your eyes to find a rider kneeling beside you, face drawn and concerned. He wraps a cloak around your shoulders. You try to speak, and your throat rasps. He nods and lifts you slowly into a sitting position. You lean against him and let the world rock back into focus. He props you against a yurt wall, whispers words you almost understand. His breath smells of smoke and sweat. He lowers your boot and peers at the makeshift bandage. He shakes his head and motions for another rider to fetch water. Soon warm water pours over your leg, washing away dried blood from the cloth. It hisses and smokes where the cloth meets your skin. You grit your teeth and press your lips together. The second rider returns with fresh cloth. He hands it to the first rider, who gently unwraps the old dressing. You flinch as the bandage loosens. The wound looks clean but deep. You feel helpless as the rider dips the new cloth into clean water and wraps it firmly around your leg. He ties it with care, knotting it once and tucking the ends neatly. You exhale, relief and exhaustion mingling in your chest. You sit back against the tent and watch shadows lengthen across the plain. The camp hums around you, voices, clattering cups, distant laughter. You feel the pull of sleep. Your eyelids droop and your head lolls forward. You exhale a ragged sigh. Your last thought before darkness claims you is that tomorrow you must learn this healer's name, buy him a drink, and maybe, just maybe, repay him by bringing him a fresh horse liver. That way you will understand his work better before the next time your body breaks under you. And then you pass out. You wake to a world of pain and sunlight pounding through the tent flap. Your leg throbs beneath thick bandages, and your fingers sting where the healer's cloth rubbed raw skin into a stew of dirt and blood. You try to stretch, but your muscles lock in protest. Still, the herd needs moving, and the wagon's axle snapped yesterday. Your task today is to fix it. Outside the yurt door, the broken wagon leans on noisy wheels. The metal band around one wheel is cracked, and the wooden axle splintered in two. No one tells you how to fix it. You rub your eyes, taste yesterday's blood at the back of your throat, and step forward. Your boot heels grate on frozen mud. You lift the wagon's frame with a grunt. It shifts with a creak that sounds like a dying animal. The camp's blacksmith points at the axle and shrugs. His tools are reserved for steel swords, not splintered wood. Another nomad tosses you a length of rope and a jagged piece of scrap iron. You blink at the makeshift kit and realize improvisation is your only weapon. You kneel beside the wheel and press your hands against the cold wood. It feels charged with failure. You loop the rope around the cracked axle and pull. The fibers bite into your palms. The burn is instant and raw. You gasp and clamp your teeth together. You pull again, gritting your teeth as the rope cuts red lines into your skin. The axle budges an inch. You let go, shake your hands, and curse at nothing in particular. Someone tosses you a wooden block. It's heavy and splintered. The scrap iron wedges under the wheel hub. You push with your foot, feeling the axle shift against its housing. You hammer the block with your other boot until the axle snaps free. You wipe sweat and blood from your brow and grin despite the pain. One step done. Next comes something to hold the wheel in place. You find a shard of bone from last night's sheep roast. It is jagged but stiff. You drill a hole through it with the scrap iron, twisting until your arms shake. You thread the bone through the axle hole and tie it tight with the rope. It won't last long, but it will hold for now. You stand and test the wheel. It rolls, creaks, and wobbles. You wince at the sound. The bone pin flexes under the wagon's weight. You add a second pin made from a sharpened stick. It feels less sturdy, but you have no choice. The wheels spin more smoothly, but at the cost of more rope burn on your hands. Your hands are bleeding now, blistered red and weeping. You shove them into your cloak to hide the mess. You glance at your bandaged leg and realize you have not even tended to last night's hurt. You leave the leg alone, minding the wagon's repair instead. Survival demands priorities. A rider brings a ladle of hot tea and urges you to drink. You tip back the bowl and let the bitter liquid wash over your tongue. You swallow and feel your mind sharpen. You wipe foam from your lips and resume work. Next, you must secure the axle to the wagon's frame. You gather lengths of split hide from a pack of old leather strips. You soak them in water until they bend. You twist them around the axle housing, tying tight knots that pull the frame together. Each twist burns your forearms. Each knot tightens until your fingers cramp. You lash the strips with the scrap iron, scoring grooves so the hide grips the wood. The blacksmith watches and snorts. He hands you a rawhide thong and a piece of cloth. You braid the thong into a loop around the axle. You tuck the cloth under each knot to protect the wood. The bundle looks haphazard, but it holds. You step back and test the wagon by rocking it gently. The repaired axle groans but does not break. You breathe in deep and prick your finger on the rope burn. A drop of blood falls onto the frozen ground and steams. You press your thumb to your lip and taste iron. You realize you are dizzy. Your head swims with sun and sweat and the memory of last night's surgery. By sundown, the wagon stands upright, wheels aligned, axle bound with leather and bone. It is barely stable, but it will carry supplies until you reach the next camp. You step back, and hands trembling, flick rope fibers from your palms. The blistered skin peels away in shards. You do not try to stop it. You only stare at the ground and let your stomach settle. The sky turns pink and gold. Campfires flare to life. Horses neigh at the dusk. Nomads drift toward the yurt circle to plan tonight's watch. You try to follow their words about guard shifts and water rations. Your vision blurs with fatigue. Your body aches in too many places to count. A rider approaches with more bandages soaked in yak fat. He breathes warm grease onto your rope-burned hands and wraps cloth around them. The dressing is thick and stinks of animal sweat. You grip his arm and nod. You thank him through clenched teeth. Your repaired wagon stands behind you, waiting. Your horse paws at the ground, sensing you are not up to the ride ahead. You turn away from both. Your mind and body rebel at the thought of continuing. The camp's healer appears again, named or unnamed, grinning as always. He pours warm kumis on your leg and laughs when you flare at the sting. Then he taps your repaired axle with a prayer. You do not ask why. You only nod, and let him bless your work and your bones. Night falls. The campfires throw dancing shadows across the ground. You stagger toward your yurt and collapse inside. You try to lie down, but your leg and your hands refuse. You wrap yourself in your blanket and clutch the yurt's central pole for balance. Your mind drifts. You imagine yourself drifting across the plain, rope burns weeping, axle bound with bony pins, bandaged and barely alive. You mutter in your fever dream that you cannot do this again. The world spins. You see spots of firelight. Someone ties a rope from the yurt pole to your belt. They nod at you and whisper that you must sleep. They leave you there, half sitting and half lying, tethered like a colt. You drift between pain and relief as the flap closes. You do not wander off. You do not fall into the cold night beyond. You only drift, strapped to your yurt, trapped in rope burn and dreams of tomorrow's axle. You sink onto a flat stone near the campfire, body still humming from the day's labor. The sky is bruised purple as the sun slips below the horizon. A pile of goat carcasses smokes on a spit nearby, each one blackened and charred until the edges crack like scorched bark. The cook hands you a chunk of meat, and you take it with shaking fingers. The meat is overcooked in the best possible way. You bite down and hear a hard crack. Pain flares along your jaw. You spit out a small bone shard that rattles like a broken tooth. Your tongue flicks at the tiny splinter before it cuts into the gum. You grit your teeth and swallow hard. The smoky taste floods your mouth. You chew and chew until your jaw aches more than it did when you snapped your leg. You swallow again, half expecting to choke, and force yourself to smile. Across the fire, a rider smiles at you, offering another strip. You know you should refuse, but you cannot. In this camp, politeness means acceptance. You reach out, take the meat, and nod just a brief nod. He holds a spear tipped with iron. You accept the offer. The world would rather bleed you with a spear than let you break their custom. The meat is tough and stringy. You tug at it with your teeth and peel off a shivering strip. Each bite sends shards of ash across your tongue. You swallow more bone fragments. Your teeth grind them into dust. You wonder how many molars you will lose before morning. Someone passes a cup of kumis. You guzzle it down to wash away splinters and soot. The sour milk burns your throat, but at least it moistens your mouth. You exhale and see the steam drift into the night air. You pat your chest. You are still alive. A child balances on a log with a skewer of kidney. You watch him bite into the organ. His face scrunches, then smooths out into a grin. He offers you the skewer. You take it. The kidney is chewy with a metallic tang. You force down 2 bites before you can no longer swallow. You wipe your mouth on the back of your hand and hand the skewer back. The child laughs and offers you a 3rd helping. You shake your head. He shrugs and eats the rest himself. Around you, the camp settles into chatter. Blades clink as men secure saddles. Women murmur prayers over covered bowls. Horses stamp at their tethers. Smoke from the cooking fire drifts up in lazy spirals. You feel a small bond with this chaos. Your bandaged leg pulses with dull pain. You shift to ease the ache. The leather beneath you creaks. More meat arrives. This time, it is a hunk of sinew laced with gristle. You hesitate, then bite. Your teeth crunch through gristle and more bone. A shard slices your gum again. You taste warm blood in your mouth. You swallow it with a grimace. Someone shoves a cup of hot water at you. You take it gratefully and sip. The water is herbal and comforting. You close your eyes and let the warmth ease your jaw. You breathe in the faint scent of goat fat and buckwheat from the stew bubbling nearby. You feel the ache of hunger and the ache of being human. A rider sits down beside you and wraps an arm around your shoulder. He presses a small coin into your palm. It clinks, heavy with promise. The coin is worth a day's labor. You look at him and return the smile he gives you. You nod once, meaning thank you, or perhaps thank the gods, or maybe just thank the boy for holding that spear at your back. Night deepens and stars emerge. The fire flickers and shadows dance across faces smeared with sweat and soot. You take one last bite of meat, choke down a fragment of bone, and sip kumis until your stomach rumbles no more. You pat your belly, strained and satisfied. You lean back, propping yourself on an elbow, and watch the camp settle. A child recites a prayer for the dead. A woman hums quietly as she tends to a wounded horse. You close your eyes. The meal was brutal, the customs unforgiving, but you are fed. Your back is sore, your teeth ache, and tomorrow will bring more challenges. But tonight, you have broken bread or meat with these nomads. You have shown respect, you have accepted their spear and earned their trust. You sit in the dying light, chewing the last of the smoke off your teeth and tasting the faint echo of blood. You pretend to like it because here, survival tastes a lot like burnt meat and broken bones. And tomorrow, you will do it all again. You sit on a rough-hewn log just outside the yurt circle, cloak wrapped tight around your shoulders. The firelight spills across the grass, but beyond its reach the plain falls into velvet darkness. Your breath puffs in small white clouds. The night air is cold enough to bite exposed skin. It is your turn to keep watch. You shift the weight of your body and feel the ache in your leg where last night's wound still throbs. You rest your blade across your lap an old knife with a cracked bone handle. The metal glints faintly in the fire's glow. You grip it tightly. A horse snorts nearby, its tether rope rattling as it shifts in its stall. You turn your head and see the beast's eyes shining in the dark. Its nostrils flare as it exhales, steam drifting upward. You rub your hand along its flank and murmur a soft word. It whinnies and stomps once, as if answering that watch is now mutual. Behind you, the camp sleeps. The yurts huddle in a loose half-circle, each one lit by a lone candle or lantern. Shadows flicker across the felt walls. Horses and cattle stand tethered side by side, their breath echoing like distant drums. The world feels paused, waiting for tomorrow's tasks. But right now, the plain moves with hidden life. You strain to listen. The wind chirps around you, rustling grass and rattling ropes. It carries distant sounds voices muffled by the night, a twig snapping far off, the faint hoot of an owl. And beneath it all, you hear it. The low, haunting howl of wolves. One howl, then another. The sound weaving through the darkness like a warning. Your heart hammers against your ribs. Wolves hunt in packs here, and they have a taste for easy prey. You tighten your grip on the blade. The metal feels cool against your palm. You swallow hard and remind yourself that the herd dogs sleep behind you, that the fire burns above you, that the walls of your yurt stand firm. Remind yourself that they prefer mutton. Another howl echoes, closer now. You peer into the gloom, scanning for movement. The darkness is thick and alive. A pair of yellow eyes glint for an instant among the grass, then vanish. You exhale. You curse under your breath. You slide off the log and step toward the horse pens. If anything approaches, you will stand between beast and herd. Your boots crackle through frost-hardened grass. Each step echoes too loudly. The snuffling breaths of horses mingle with your own. You reach the pens and run a hand along the fence post. You steady yourself and remind your shaking fingers that you have a knife. Your blade into your free hand. The howls rise into a chorus. You hear branches snapping beyond the camp's edge. The dogs stir, one rising and baring teeth, another growling low. You reach back and call to the sleeper next to the fire. No answer. You curse the lack of reliable watchmates. You nurse a sudden regret for refusing that extra kumis earlier. Warmth and alertness now feel like luxuries you traded away. Another figure emerges from a yurt, lantern held high. You wave him forward. He joins you at the pens, shoulders hunched. You nod in greeting without speaking. Together you scan the boundary. The wolves come into view. 4 of them, lean shapes sliding between tufts of grass. Their coats blend with the night, mottled grey and black. They circle the perimeter, eyes fixed on the herd. Their breaths roll out in icy clouds. Their paws stir stones in the dirt. You swallow against the lump in your throat. The other guard grips his spear. You shift your knife so it rests against your thigh. The dogs growl and lunge forward, chains rattling. The wolves pause. They lower their heads and snarl back. One wolf steps into the camp's edge, movement smooth as smoke. The leader of your herd shifts and brands. It snorts and turns its rump toward the intruder. You feel the momentum shift. The herd dogs bark in fierce unison. The wolves snarl. You step forward and shout a warning. Your lance hand shakes. You clear your throat and scream again. The sound cracks like a whip. The wolves freeze. Their yellow eyes lock onto you. For a moment, time stops. The fire flickers. The horses press back. The wolves weigh the risk. Then the dogs spring, snarling, and the wolves leap back into the grass. You lunge forward with blade raised. You shout and stomp. The second guard yells, banging his spear shaft on the post. The wolves vanish into the plain, their howls trailing behind them, like dying echoes. Your knees tremble and your blade shakes in your hand. You pant, chest heaving. The dogs snap at strays of grass. The other guard leans on his spear and nods. You exhale, relief and adrenaline mingling in your veins. The night settles again. The only sounds are horses snorting and the wind in the grass. You lean against the post, blade still in hand, and watch the darkness. The camp remains safe for now. You glance at the horses, their eyes bright in the lantern light. You pet one gently. It snorts again, more quietly. You stroke its mane and murmur thanks to the gods, to fate, to whatever kept the wolves at bay. Your turn at watch is still not over. The sky is a swirl of stars. You know they will watch with you until dawn breaks. But the worst has passed. The herd is safe. The wolves have been warned. You settle back onto your log, blade across your lap, eyes on the dark field beyond. The wind stirs once more. You rise slightly in your seat, alert. You listen. You breathe. You keep watch. You lie down on the rough felt mat, fully clothed, under a blanket that is half torn and stiff with yesterday's sweat. Your back presses against the cold ground, and every bump in the wood floor presses into your spine. The yurt creaks as the wind slides under the fabric walls. You hear a snap of a wooden pole, and you hold your breath, convinced it is about to collapse on you. A rider snores softly somewhere to your left, a steady rumble you cannot block out. It rises and falls like distant thunder. You stare up at the dark canvas ceiling, tracing each shape of patchwork with your eyes. The lantern has been snuffed for hours. Moonlight filters through the gap at the top of the yurt and paints a pale circle on the ground. Your feet are numb where they rest against the frozen earth under the blanket. You wiggle your toes and feel nothing but stiffness. You clutch the blanket tighter around your ankles, pulling it up to your knees. The wool itches against your skin, but it is the only warmth you have. You listen for every sound. A low breeze rattles the ropes outside. A horse stamps its foot. Someone coughs in their sleep. A soft scratching drifts across your calf. You freeze. Something is crawling upward, tiny legs tickling your flesh. You stare at the spot where the blanket meets your boot. A flea or a tick or a tiny insect scuttles along the seam of your trousers. You do not move. You dare not. If you shift, you will feel it crawl over bare skin. If you shift, you might roll toward the snorer and wake him. You might expose yourself to the cold air beneath the flap. You might cry out. You do none of these things. You close your eyes and focus on breathing. In through your nose, out through your mouth, soft and steady. You count each breath until the scratching eases. You imagine it is just a bit of straw trapped in your clothing, a harmless bit of debris. You choose to believe that. Your mind drifts to the day ahead. You will wake to frozen ground and the smell of smoke. You will taste more sour milk and bind more wounds. You will ride again across the plain with your injured leg and blistered hands. You will herd animals and carry supplies. You will swallow grit and spit blood. You roll the thought away like a heavy stone. It is too much to carry right now. You breathe again. You tell yourself to rest. You tell yourself that sleep is a gift, and you must accept it, even if your body refuses. The snoring rider shifts and mumbles in his sleep. His breath warms the air around you, then fades. The yurt shivers under another gust of wind. You smell the smoke from the fire pit, still faint in the air. You breathe in and taste ash. You exhale and taste sweat. A distant wolf howl drifts across the plain and sends a pulse through your chest. You wish it were closer. You wish you could stand guard until morning, but your body drifts at the edges of consciousness. You shiver despite the blanket. Your arms feel heavy from the day's toil. Your neck aches where the salve was rubbed in. You turn your head just enough to feel the weight of your hair on your cheek. You pull the cloth over your face, covering your eyes, to block out even the pale moonlight. In the dark, you hear something else. A faint cry, like a child or a newborn foal. You sit up to listen, but your leg protests. The pain flares and you slump back down. You hiss through your teeth and bury your head in the blanket. You breathe shallowly until the cry stops. Your thoughts dissolve into fragments warmth, relief, The taste of clean water, the feel of grass beneath your palm, the soft wicker of a horse. You chase each fragment like a moth to a flame, desperate to hold on. Your breath grows slower, your muscles unclench. Your mind drifts past the screams of pain, and the sting of rope burns. You float above the yurt's floor, above the plain, above the night watch. Then your body dissolves into sleep. You do not move. You simply breathe and try not to cry. And in the fragile hours before dawn, you dream of a place where blankets are new, fires burn steady, and every stray insect stays outside. You dream of clean water and soft beds. You dream of waking whole and rested. But for now, this is enough. You remain still under the half-torn blanket, feet cold, eyes closed, heart beating in the dark. You limp out of your yurt at dawn, every step a reminder of the day you just endured. Your stomach twists with hunger and the day's sour milk. Your bandaged leg throbs, your neck still itches from sunburn, and your hands smart from yesterday's rope burns. You glance down at your tunic and see smudges of grease, blood, and dust. The garment is a roadmap of your misery. You lift your head and squint at the plain stretching infinite around you. The wind has already begun its morning howl, rattling tent ropes and raising goosebumps on your skin. You remember the goat-fat knife gleaming in the war council. You remember the surgeon's drunken grin as he poured kumis down your wound. You taste burnt meat on your tongue and feel the ache of bone fragments rattling in your mouth. A rider nods at you as he heads off to saddle his horse. You return the nod, wincing at the pressure on your leg. You slide your feet into stiff boots and cinch the saddle's straps. You climb into the saddle in a single painful motion, your joints creaking. You guide your horse into the nascent herd emerging from camp. The animals move off in lowing clusters. You take your place among the riders, each one steady and uncomplaining. You swallow the lump in your throat and grip the reins. You survived. Technically you survived, but survival feels like a set of scars stitched together with bitter laughter. Your dignity was last seen somewhere near the butcher's table, trampled by livestock hooves. Your pride was shredded alongside that first strip of overcooked meat. Your comfort level evaporated under the midday sun the moment you stepped outside the yurt. You watch the horizon shift in pale morning light, and think you understand now why these nomads conquered more territory than any empire before or since. They did not conquer because they craved glory. They conquered to escape the relentless boredom of safety. They conquered because anything was better than this endless cycle of cold, hunger, and indignity. You lean forward, whisper a word to your horse, and ride on. Each mile you cover is a small victory against the steppe itself. You ride because the only alternative is to kneel forever in the mud, begging for scraps and begging for relief that never comes. As you disappear into the glimmering grass, you reflect on your single day here. You feel bruised, broken, and infinitely wiser. You carry a kernel of respect for every nomad you met. They lived this life day after day. You could not. Not one more dawn. You follow the herd into the rising sun, wondering how many days you might last. Then you shake your head and vow never to find out.